My name is Dawn Burleigh, and I'm assistant professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Lethbridge. And within our Faculty of Education, we have a program that is launching in the fall of 2018, so upcoming in just a few months. And the program is called NIITSITAPI. And the NIITSITAPI program is aimed at students who would like to become teachers, so it is part of our teacher certification program. And students will begin the program in August, and one of the aims of the program is to develop and grow teachers who have an area of expertise in Indigenous education for teaching in a number of different contexts, both in the public system but also in community schools. So one of the primary areas of focus for the program is to admit students who will have an interest in staying in the southern Alberta area in Treaty 7 to teach with an integration of Blackfoot language, knowledge, understanding, and perspectives. So the primary aim of the program is really to find a balance of integration of Blackfoot perspectives and history and knowledge into existing curriculum, and of course overall the program will align with the teaching quality standards and all the certification requirements for a teacher in the province of Alberta. Well, I think we're learning about what excellence in Indigenous education looks like for us here in this area in Treaty 7 and at the University of Lethbridge. So this program is a step towards that journey of learning about what that looks like. So some of the points that I think really draw out the excellence in this program is that it is centered on Blackfoot Blackfoot ways of knowing and understanding, and finding, as I said, the points of incorporation and the points of integration for that Blackfoot knowing and understanding to be the basis of understanding about teaching practice and about the work that teachers do. So I think that integration point is really important as well. The Blackfoot integration is really important here, as I said, because of where we're located and because we're in Treaty 7. That's a strong focus of the program here in southern Alberta. And I think that's what really makes the program unique. And in addition, we have a really unique programming component in the Faculty of Education that our NIITSITAPI students will of course also be involved with, and that's our professional semester 3. So over the course of their work in the Faculty of Education, all students participate in 4 practicums out in the schools. The last one is professional semester 3, and it's a full semester of in-classroom experience. So it gives NIITSITAPI students an excellent opportunity to work on their teaching and be out in the field practicing what they've learned here in the faculty, integrating their Blackfoot knowledge, history, perspectives, language for some into their teaching practice. So there's great course-based components about Blackfoot language and culture, but also a number of opportunities for students to integrate that understanding into their practice throughout professional semester 1, 2, and the full semester in professional semester 3. I think the success of the program can be measured in a number of different ways, but I think the one that is probably most fruitful and most useful and purposeful is actually how teachers, once they've graduated from our program and left the NIITSITAPI program, how they take up their work in teaching in the community, in schools within the city, and in their own communities where they may be from. And I think that is a real measure of success about how they're doing out in the classroom teaching, and that really that voice comes from their students that they work with, the school communities that they're a part of, as well as the parents that are involved in those school communities. So really the measure of success is individual, and it's based very much on the teaching practices that students take up once they leave the NIITSITAPI program. It's something that I think we're working through within the faculty, and I've kind of grappled with throughout my teaching and research as well. But I think Indigenous education means something different to a number of different people. And I think within our faculty, we see a real necessity to improve and grow in how we understand Indigenous education and how we attend to it. Not only because we're located here in Treaty 7 and have so many Blackfoot students that come through our program, but in addition, there are provincial calls through the teaching quality standard and curriculum redesign to better attend to Indigenous perspectives, histories, peoples, stories, languages throughout the curriculum and throughout teaching. So for that reason, within the educational context, I think Indigenous education is the responsibility of and for all teachers to better understand. How teachers take that up will be varied depending on their own positionality and understanding of who they are and where they're from and how they kind of enter this dialogue. But I think Indigenous education can be quite broad. I think it includes concepts around positionality, like I said. I think it includes issues related to histories, peoples, experiences, stories, reconciliation, a number of different facets. But I think a big piece for us here in the faculty is that we see a responsibility and a role to play within Indigenous education. And for many of our faculty, myself included, positioning ourselves as non-Indigenous allies within Indigenous education is an important exploration that we're going through now, and is a really exciting opportunity to take on at this time. I think right now we have our NIITSITAPI program, which I've mentioned, that's starting in the fall. It is a one-time program offering, so in the next 10 years, I think within our faculty to have sustainable funding for sustainable Indigenous education programming for all students, with areas of specialization for those wanting to take up work specifically in Indigenous education, so those students who have Native American studies as their undergraduate focus. It would be great to see that developed in the program 10 years down the road, to really be able to have a broad spectrum of entry points for a number of different types of students who come into our program in Indigenous education. Because, as I said, with the changes in the teaching quality standard and provincial mandates related to curriculum and policy in education, it's vitally important that all students graduating from our program really have an understanding of how they begin their own journeys within Indigenous education for themselves and for the students that they will teach throughout their career. So it would be wonderful to see broad and general programming for all students, with areas of specialization and really niche areas of majors and minors for students who have a very keen interest in the area, or who intend to teach within First Nations communities and want to have a more specific focus about First Nations, Métis, and Inuit education overall. Funding is a key piece to have that as a permanent funding component in the program. But other than funding, I think there's some professional development opportunities that could really benefit faculty to be ready and prepared to implement Indigenous education programming or Indigenous education components into existing courses. So developing capacity within the faculty and instructors within our faculty, I think, is a really key piece to ensure that folks feel ready and prepared and well aligned to start their work within Indigenous education. As I said before, primarily our faculty is non-Indigenous, and so finding their place within that, finding my place within that as well, is an important aspect. So professional development opportunities, ongoing learning and collaboration, not only within our faculty, but with Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working in Indigenous education within our university and across the province, I think is really important to build capacity. So the professional development piece is really important. And then I think there's the ongoing development of materials and resources that are targeted to education students that become really valuable. And there are some great ones out there right now that we rely on and use quite heavily. But as materials and resources are developed more so moving into the future, it would be amazing to see resources, texts, audio, video pieces that could be used with students and for faculty as well. So I think the development of resources and materials, things like lesson plans, textbook, curricular resources, teaching resources that could be used with students, but also resources for teachers to use with their own development in a self-directed learning kind of way would be outstanding as well. And I think beyond the kind of funding, resources, materials, and professional development, I think a really important piece when we talk about resources are the human resources. So allowing and creating spaces within faculties of education and universities broadly for Indigenous scholars to bring their understanding and knowledge in a way that is valued and is counted and is heard in faculties, I think is a really important piece, as well as having some types of programs, I think, to have, maybe an elder in residence or have elders included in the programming is really important, because that knowledge can't be found elsewhere. So I think developing program supports and spaces and places and positions for Indigenous scholars and elders and knowledge holders and those with the language who are fluent to have opportunities within the university and at the faculty to include and utilize those resources in what would be wonderful to be to have some reciprocity with that, to be able to offer something back from the faculty, to have people involved. So I think people as resources is an important piece to include as well.